What's the dumbest thing you've done out of pure horniness? Before we start, welcome back to Reddit Stories Hub. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Here, we'll be telling you interesting, thought-provoking stories from Reddit. So, get comfortable and let's jump right in. Story 1. I ran into an old high school teacher one night at a local bar just a few years after graduation. We started chatting and she was talking about her and Mr. splitting up and being lonely, that her daughter was out of the house at college. Ironically, her daughter was a year older than me, and we went to the same high school. Several hours and drinks later, we ended up at her house at her place where she steps away to freshen up, and I was trying to comprehend life like Travolta's character in Pulp Fiction on a date with Mrs. Wallace. She leads me into what I think is her room and starts undressing me in her and then whispers something like, "You like how the bed smells? My daughter slept here the other night, and I didn't change the sheets." My brain sobered up some, but then when she hit me with, "I know she sleeps naked, so just pretend it's your fantasy of doing a mom and daughter." At that point I sobered up beyond sober, and was just creeped the F out. A few words later I heard the security alarm beep of the door being opened into the house. It's her husband. I'm like, "Thought you were separated," and she says, "Well, yes and no." What the F? She plays it off to him like I'm some dude that banged his daughter the other night, and was over grabbing some things I left, and then they continue to argue. Somehow I slowly slipped out and hit the brick. Later found out that for months she was coming into that bar looking for me, and also others. Apparently not the first victim, and probably won't be the last. Lesson learned. Story 2. I ended up making out with and going home with an attractive, but completely crazy woman who used to hang around our local bar. Back at her place she puts on her Lauryn Hill CD, strips completely naked, attempts to dance provocatively, we were both pretty drunk, and starts giving me head. It was at this point her 18-year-old son wandered into the lounge and started protesting violently about what was going on. She tells him to F off and huge argument erupts between them. Remember, she's drunk and naked, and I'm sitting on the sofa with my jeans around my ankles and a rapidly deflating hard-on. I came to my senses, zipped back up and got the F out. Apparently, she's currently doing time for violently assaulting and attempting to stab her boyfriend, so I think I got off pretty light. Story 3. I tried to do a jar of grape jelly, was really excited to try it all day when I got home, because I had stolen it that morning at my bus stop at the convenience store and kept it in my backpack all day. I could barely get my clothes off fast enough when I got home and immediately went to work. Obviously, it didn't work, and just as I was getting ready to give up, my parents came home early and surprised me. I had no time to clean anything up, so I just balled up the whole mess into an undershirt and shoved it under my bed, and just pulled my boxers and shorts up over myself still covered in jelly, and greeted my parents as naturally as I could. Ended up having to interact with them in the kitchen for at least 30 minutes, as everything in my shorts was drying and setting and adhering to everything else, and the stench of old, dry jelly was all I could smell. I even made and ate peanut butter and jelly while we were talking, because I was so paranoid about the jelly smell. It would have honestly been a horrible experience even if I just tried it and failed without them coming home, but the extra shame that came with having to just sit in that filth like that stayed with me for weeks. Story 4. I was dating a girl at work, and we would regularly do it at her side of our business complex. Though she was part of the same company, she was part of a separate regional division and not part of corporate, so her office was typically always empty besides her. One time we were really hot and heavy into it inside the restroom, and against our better judgment we decided doing in the A was a good idea. So, we did our thing, and I blew the biggest, deepest load into her A. As I pulled out, there was a fair amount of poop on my D, and I walked over to the sink to try and wash it off. As I'm rinsing myself into the sink, we hear the door to her office open, and a large group of coworkers walk in. I panic and immediately try to put my D away, and as I drop from my tiptoes, I slam my nut sack up against the wall of the sink, and pull my taint skin so hard I almost buckled in pain. She runs out of the restroom and closes the door behind her, and I'm sitting in the dark on the toilet seat with shit on my D and balls hurting, contemplating my life choices. Story 5. I went to a clothing-optional beach once, expecting to see a lot of topless sunbathing. Instead, I learned the hard way that it's populated by wrinkly old men with big bellies and small D. I thought, Maybe all the ladies are hiding further up the beach where the bushes can cover them from all the stairs. Turns out that's where the old men suck each other off. Story 6. Several years back, a woman I had been flirting with called me in the middle of the night one time because she wasn't feeling well and asked if I could pick up some medicine and bring it to her place. Went to her place not expecting too much other than maybe earning some brownie points for dropping off the meds. Anyway, she invites me in and asks if I could spend the night with her. That of course gets me all titillated. However, by the time we get into bed, she's all tired and drowsy despite her best attempt at acting seductive. Next thing I know, I'm lying in bed next to her with my arm pinned under her body while she's snoring away and farting. I end up lying like that for the rest of the night. Got maybe 30 minutes of sleep that entire night, and of course I then had to get up to work a whole shift in the morning. At least I did earn some brownie points for that, because we ended up dating for not quite a year afterward. Story 7. Connected with a friend's ex who I knew had feelings for me. Went to catch up over lunch, ended up spending all day drinking with her, then fingered her at the outdoor area of an absolutely packed bar. Neither of us were staying in places we could have people spend the night, so hired a late hotel room. Get in the door, she immediately vomited all over the room and spent the next 2 hours crying on the floor saying she loved me while I did my best to clean up. Story 8. I had it so bad for this Chinese girl at university back in 2004, and she would not give me the time of day. I did everything I possibly could. Then in a moment of insane desperation and browsing shit during the earlier days of the internet, I found some sort of self-proclaimed wizard living in California who specialized in love spells, and I shit you not, my 20-year-old brain thought it was a good idea to send said wizard $200 to cast the spell. Suffice it to say the spell did not work. To this day I still can't believe how stupid I was. Male hormones are a ridiculous thing. Story 9. I live in a state with pretty harsh winters. I was at a buddy's house partying during the holidays, and we got hit by a pretty good storm that closed the road. My buddy's place was in a canyon where the snowfall was even greater, making leaving that much more impossible. I was dating a girl at the time who was a bit of a freak. She was not with me at the party, she was hanging out with a friend who was visiting from out of state, but they were going to come to the party after they were done doing their thing. Well, they got to talking and decided that we should have a threesome. I'm notified of this development via text message, and am instantly both ecstatic and mortified. I'm stuck. They can't get to me, and they are on their way to my house. I explained the situation to my buddy, and he did the only thing a bro could do in that moment. He helped me cut apart his mom's wicker chair that had belonged to her grandmother so we could try to make snowshoes. They worked for about 50 feet. Story 10. Got hustled by a bar skank who told me how badly she wanted to do it with me. She got me to buy her a cab ride home from the bar, a case of beer, lottery tickets, and then takeout. We got to some random house. She took the beer, etc. and said, "Just wait here. I want to make sure nobody's home." 20 minutes later, with the meter still running, I went and knocked on the door. Some guy answered, all tired and annoyed at 3 a.m. Yes, she went around the side of the house and vanished. I assumed there was a side door she was sneaking in. It was 3 a.m., so I didn't see anything else. The guy never even heard of her and went off before he called the cop. I told the cab driver to just take me home. $80 later, I got into bed alone, feeling like the biggest fool on God's green earth. Story 11. I got really drunk and high while out with some mates, been drinking for 9 hours or so. Ended up at my friend's house as I missed the last bus home, and turns out that's where my ex was staying over too. We had a sofa each to sleep on until she asked if I wanted a shag, because of drunken horn and familiar places and all that, so I agreed, obviously. I'm a gentleman like that. Anywho, all was going well, but then roughly 15 minutes in I got a massive leg cramp in my right thigh. Clearly, I hadn't drank enough water that day, so I asked her if it was alright for a break, and then I proceeded to spark up another pre-rolled joint. Now at this point there were 3 of her, the ceiling was the wall, and my clothes refused to return to my body as my leg was in pain, and I just couldn't seem to grab anything other than my joint. So, I don't know when I fell asleep, but I woke up in the morning on the floor, completely naked except for a protection still on my limb D, and my friend's flat mate cooking herself some breakfast. My friend's flat mate was very Muslim, and completely ignored me slapping off the protection, and sticking my clothes back on, grabbing the rest of my stuff, and shamefully saying goodbye before heading home. Apparently, she wasn't happy with what she woke up to, but happy enough to leave me laying there on the floor, the pervert, and no one involved ever mentioned the whole ordeal ever again. Story 12. One night I was on Grindr and started started talking to this guy on there. He sent me pics of himself, and I thought he was so hot, so I asked if we could hang out that night. He was hesitant about it, I don't remember the reason, but said that he would be down to come over if we smoked first. I told him I didn't have any on me, and so he said that his roommate had some, but he would have to buy from him, and he was low on money. He asked if I could send him $40 through Cash App so he could buy the weed and then bring it over. I suspected at this point he was trying to play me, but again, I was very horny and found this guy extremely attractive. The pictures he sent me looked very real too. So, I figured if it's a scam I lose out on $40, and if it's not, I get some fire D. I took my chances and sent him the $40, immediately regretting it. I told him I sent it, and a few minutes later he stops replying. I kept sending him messages and then he blocked me. I still cannot believe how dumb I was to actually send that money. I wanted to put myself in horny jail right after. Story 13. When I was like 12, I tried to print out some pictures from an adult site. Then my parents came home, so I tried to cancel the print. Computer froze with porn still on the screen. Out of pure fear I unplugged the computer, and the paper was about halfway through the printing process, so I had to rip it out, hide my boner and restart the computer after they left the room. Story 14. I've gone to great lengths before, driving hundreds of miles, spending hundreds of dollars, following through with someone I know is a catfish, but I don't care because I know it's still a girl and that's all that mattered, etc. But I'd have to say the dumbest was riding my bike 5 miles in the rain to this girl's house because her parents were gone. And this was when I was 14, so we weren't even doing it. She was just hot and I wanted to hang out with her. So, I showed up soaking wet and freezing cold for a really bad makeout session. Story 15. In college, 2 girls, just friends, from our hometown asked my roommate and me to come party with them as they had 2 other girls at their place. One of the girls was also in college at our university, and the other was that girl's parents' foreign exchange student from Iceland. We all got drunk, and the next thing I knew my roommate and I were in a bedroom with the 2 girls we just met. I was on the bed with the college-aged girl making out, and my roommate was on the floor, having consensual shag with the foreign exchange student. A couple days later, the college-age girl who was very religious was feeling guilty and threatened to call the cops on my roommate because he had done it with a 17-year-old. We were too drunk to even consider that she might be underage. For the next 2 weeks we drove ourselves crazy thinking that the police were going to be knocking on our apartment door, charging my roommate with doing it with a minor and me as an accomplice. Thank God, she had second thoughts and never reported it to her parents or the cops, but we were sweating this out for about 3 weeks. Story 16. Moving out of college at the end of my first year. Since I went to the same college as my twin sister, my parents went on 2 trips to take our stuff, so they took half our stuff one weekend, then the second weekend we went with them with the remaining stuff. Anyways, on the first packing, I packed away my lube, thinking it would only be a week until I was home, and I get spend a week not jacking off so I could focus on finals. Never trust an 18-year-old guy to not be horny. Few days in and I was getting a bit hot and bothered, but I had no lube to crank one out, so I ended up going into the dorm shower and making some makeshift lube from shower shampoo and the water from the shower head. Big mistake. The shampoo was kind of cheap and sticky and my sickness ended up shriveling and I didn't get an erection for a week. Even worse, I think some of the soap got into my pee hole, so it hurt to pee for a week too. Mistakes were made. Story 17. I met this girl in my grade school, 8th grade, who lived kinda close to me. Driving it was a couple miles, but walking directly through the woods between both of our houses was only about a mile and a half. The first time I did it I came out pretty far away from her house, but by the 5th time or so I had it down pretty damn good. Eventually the bushwhack turned into a herd path, and when the night sky was clear I didn't even need a flashlight. She would just sneak me in through her window and we would party down. Well, after a couple close calls because of the noise, she started asking me to bring her back to my place. But the thing was she would never make the trip through the woods alone. So, I would walk there, get her, walk back to my place, walk her back home, then walked back home myself. These booty calls were making me walk about 6 miles a night. That was a wild summer. The fling ended when I kicked her dad in the face sneaking into her window by accident during the winter. Story 18. I was staying in a backpacker's dorm with shared bathrooms. I had a thing for this guy staying there as well, and he was into me, but, well, it's hard to find a private spot when you both are staying in 10-bed dorms. So, we did what any horny 20-something would do. We fooled around in the shower. It's worth noting here that we had just switched from a different floor to this one and knew no one. So, there we were. Me standing in the shower, water running, him below me, keeping busy. Next minute, we hear a German accent yell outside the door, "Dude, you're flooding the hallway." In his concentration and my preoccupation, we had managed to block the drain. We came out of the bathroom and yep, the hallway was flooded. So, we spent the next hour or so mopping the hallway and introducing ourselves to the neighbors. Oh yeah, and it leaked in the floor below, so we also had to tell the front desk. Story 19. I kissed my best friend and slept with him. It was the best I ever had, even though he was saying he was speaking to someone else at the time. I was in love with him. It ripped our friendship apart and I felt disgusted with myself. I lost my best friend, and the guy I loved caused me severe problems with becoming intimate with someone again due to pure anxiety to me. I started dating my partner a while later, and we've been together 3 years now. It's been a journey. The guy messaged me recently and said he missed me and can't stop thinking about the night we had. He wanted to see me. I blocked him. I wasn't going down that road. I am not the person I was back then. There's too much pain and history there. Not fair on my partner, who was so patient with me getting back to my old self, to make contact with someone like that. Story 20. I slept with a man at my job a while ago. He told literally everyone, and most of the male population in that warehouse tried to sleep with me and made raunchy jokes about me, in front of me, until I left the job, touching my A when they passed by on accident, suggesting I go with them after work. If I had to speak about something, even work-related, with a male colleague, I would see this certain group nudging and laughing with each other. The guys stopped calling my name, they whistled for me. I am a grown woman who made the calculated choice over a span of several months to sleep with someone whom I had mistakenly trusted. I slept with him once. The guy and I had great communication the entire time leading up, and he made me feel really comfortable. That was a big joke, and I haven't done it in a year and a half, even when I'm interested in someone, because I can't shake the feeling I'm just a fun goal to brag about, not a real-life human with emotions. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.